Hi everyone. I want to talk to you a little bit about introducing your essay. So introductions are really important, and introductions, and at this point of your essay, you are really changing from kind of the researcher writer into thinking about who your audience is, and you want to start thinking about your reader. So I'm using Bruce Ballinger's chapter 4, starting to write the draft, and here you have it up. And they have this example of flashlights or floodlights. And he says here, I love this. Leads are flashlights that shine down into the story. An introduction, at least the kind I was taught to write in high school, and me too, is more like a sodium vapor lamp that lights up the whole neighborhood. I remember writing introductions to research papers that sounded like this. There are many critical problems that face society today. One of these critical problems is environmental protection, and especially the conservation of marine resources. This paper will explore blah, 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 blah. It will look at what happened, blah, 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 blah. It will argue, blah, 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 blah. So I, of course, have seen a lot of introductions like this too, and it's fine if you are at the beginning stages of your writing, but at this point of an academic paper in your academic career, we should be writing something that is much stronger. So here Ballinger goes on and gives you an example. And he says, of course, like I did, it's not that that was bad, but it's very bland. It's kind of general. It's not very enticing to the reader. So what we could do as an alternative is do something like this. And he says, Scott Mercer, owner of whale watching vessel Cetacea, tells the story of a man and his son who decide that watching whales from inside their small motorboat isn't close enough. They want to swim with them. As Mercer and his passengers watch, the man sends his son overboard with snorkel and fins, and the boy promptly swims towards a bubble cloud, a mass of air exhaled by a feeding humpback whale below the surface. What the swimmer doesn't know is that directly below the bubble cloud, the creature is on its way up, mouth gaping. Right, so we have a sense of drama, we have all of those kind of narrative and descriptive techniques. We also have much stronger verbs and syntax in this writing, and so that is the type of introduction that we are wanting for this essay. So here, Ballinger gives us some different types of leads to use, and this is what I'm going to be asking you to do. One of the things that we feel sometimes as writers is we get that writer's block of like, I don't know what to do and I don't want to start and what if this isn't good? And so one of the ways to get around that is just to do what we do, flash draft, right? Write a couple different leads. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do here. So there are multiple different types of openings and he lists them here. The first one is of course the anecdote. This is just a little story that kind of frames what your paper's about. This little anecdote that was here, you know, with the man and his son. You can use a story that is not your own, perhaps a story that you read in your research, a story that has to do with your interview, or maybe you're doing something that we're all kind of exposed to and you want to tell a little story about going grocery shopping and being overwhelmed by the choices of organic or GMOs, and you're going to use that kind of anecdote to lead us into what you discovered about that topic. So that's the first, the anecdote. The second one is a scene. The most popular one that I've seen of this is Rachel Carson's writing. She wrote about the devastations of the destruction that we are causing our environment, and she describes kind of this dystopian scene of what could happen if we don't stop and start to take care of our climate. So you could describe something like that. They have the example of describing a tropical rainforest. That would be great. But of course, something that really connects to your topic, and use all of those illustrations and descriptions that we've discussed in class. The next one is the profile. This one leads someone that's important in your topic, and this could be twofold. Just like when we talked about an interview, whether or not you want to have an expert or you want to have kind of a non-expert, either one are okay. You want to think about the balance of your paper and what you have. Some of you may need to include more pathos. Some of you may need to include more experts. It really depends upon your topic. But this would profile either someone who's been impacted by your topic or someone who is an expert in the field. So it could be someone who you saw on a TED Talk, but it's a name that people would recognize if they studied your topic. These names probably come up pretty often as you started researching. The next one is the background. So sometimes, depending on your topic, you are going to have topics that are unfamiliar to your reader, and you're going to have to give them background. So if I'm going to talk about the newspaper strikes of the 1920s, you're going to be like, what? And really, I don't know much about it besides watching Newsies. But maybe you want to give a little bit of background. Maybe you want to talk about and describe what it was like in the 1920s, what this job was, before you kind of move on to what you need to say. The next one, of course, is a quotation. So sometimes there's a great quotation that kind of captures everything you want to say. That's wonderful. And if you came across that in your research and it's already in your notes, or it just keeps running in your head, or maybe it's not even something that you have research, but it's a movie or a song lyric that like keeps connecting back to you, those are absolutely great to bring in. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go to like brainyquotes.com and like search for some random quotation, which you don't even know the person or the context, and throw it in. That's kind of like the novice writer thing to do, and we don't want to do that. The next one is opening with dialogue. So this is obviously a narrative technique that we have discussed, and the thing that I really like about dialogue and that I see in a lot of journalistic writing is that dialogue is very enticing to the reader, because when you see a giant block of text, it's not very inviting. But when you see this little dialogue, like it's a story and then shorter paragraphs, and then you kind of get to the meat and the research, it kind of lures you in. So think about a dialogue between perhaps two people talking about your topic. Maybe it's you thinking about your topic or discussing your topic with someone else, but any of those can work for dialogue. The next one is a question. For those of you who watched Nova or did that assignment, or if you've ever watched any sort of documentaries often start with kind of all of these questions and what they're trying to discover. And so feel free to use questions kind of one on top of another to get your reader thinking. I actually don't love the "can you imagine" question. I find it a bit like patronizing, but there are some good questions like, have you ever wondered about what happens to your garbage once it leaves your street? And maybe you're going to go and talk about recycling and landfills, and so something that is familiar to people, and then get their thought process kind of going deeper into your research. The next one is a contrast. So of course, something different than your topic, but really meshing two things together in order to see and more describe your topic. So here we have the myth of the superwoman. Maybe you want to talk about what it means to be a really good student, and you say, this is what people think a student is, and then you describe kind of yourself, and you say, I might not look like a good student, but this is why I am. Maybe you're redefining that word for people. And then the last one is the announcement, and that's similar to the kind of the bad one that we saw in the beginning. The announcement is just like, this is what this paper is about. You see these oftentimes, I think, in the TED Talks, the ones that I watch, oftentimes they're like, this is what I'm going to be talking about, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, and blah, 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 blah. So the announcement unto itself is not necessarily bad. And sometimes with a very complex topic, it can work really well. So what I'm going to ask you to do is exercise 4.3 here, 3 ways in. Compose 3 different beginning or leads. So time yourself, give yourself, 10 or 15 minutes to write each one. This is like writing a flash draft. Each one should be about 1 or 2 paragraphs, depending on what type of lead. Remember, a lead or introduction is no longer just 1 paragraph. It can be multiple paragraphs because you are just leading the reader into your research. We are going to be doing step 2 and 3 another time, so all I want you to do is be drafting those. And like I said before, our goal here, and as he goes on, is really to start thinking about the reader. We've done a lot of research, you've done a lot of writing in your notes, you've organized, but now we need to start thinking, how am I going to communicate this information to someone else? So I will have all the other details in the assignment, but I hope this was helpful in explaining exactly what we're going to be doing for our introductions.